Hi everyone, and welcome back to another quarter here at Rasmussen College. So this course is actually built to help you guys gain a knowledge on specific areas of the medical field and the structures of those systems that can be found in those specific areas. I'm going to use these weekly videos to help deliver the content to you, as we won't meet face-to-face, so this is my way of you getting to know me and also getting the materials in a different modality. So for week one, we're going to be really focused on pulmonary, the pulmonary system or the respiratory system. We will have 3 chapters that we're going to be looking at. Chapter 29, pages 640 to 647. Chapter 51, which is pages 1198 to 1210, and then Chapter 54, which is just one page, page 1271 to 1272. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at each of those chapters and those chapter pages. So I'm going to start with Chapter 29, which is going to be page 640 to 647. So this chapter is really going to start our discussion on the respiratory system. It's important that you know what the organs are that are part of the respiratory system. Those are your nose, the paranasal sinuses, the pharynx, the larynx, the trachea, the bronchi, the bronchioles, the alveoli, and the lungs. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take each of those and break it down a little bit further so you get a better understanding of each organ as it relates to the respiratory system. So let's start with your nose. This is an organ that we use for smell, but it also really is an important organ for the respiratory system. Your nose has 4 functions outside of smell. It serves as a passageway for your air. It serves as a purpose to warm and moisten the inhaled air that we take in. Our nose will trap dust, pollen, and other foreign objects in the cilia, or those hair-like structures inside. And it will actually assist in making the sounds for speaking and singing. So those are some really important functions of the nose. Next, we have your paranasal sinuses, or simply put, just your sinuses. They are really responsible for some other functions for you, and your sinuses are the air cavities in your cranial bones near the nose. So they're actually in touch points around your nose, but there are also 4 other places that your sinuses are. They are in your cheekbones, or the maxillas. Okay, so out here. You've got the front sinuses, which are above your eyebrows. The epithymodal sinuses, which are behind your eyes, and the cthenodal, which are actually behind those epithelials. So you've got 4 different other sets of sinuses besides the paranasal ones. Next we have your pharynx, and your pharynx is a tube that lies behind and connects to your nose, mouth, and larynx. Your pharynx is about 5 inches long and does consist of muscle and membrane. And really the main purpose and the main function of your pharynx is to actually serve as a passageway for food to your esophagus and air to your larynx and trachea. Your pharynx will also play a really important role with speech and forming specific sounds that we make in our speech. Next we have the larynx, which is also known as your voice box. This is a muscular structure that is aligned with mucous membranes and is found at the end of your pharynx. Your trachea is next, and most commonly you're going to hear the trachea called your windpipe. So this is made up of cartilage that's about 1 inch wide and about 4.5 inches long. Your trachea will serve as an opening passageway for air to reach your lungs. Now, in order for your air to reach your lungs, from the trachea we have your bronchi. And these are two branches that come off the trachea and they extend into the lungs. So there's one at the right and one at the left. These passageways will actually help carry the air from your trachea to your lungs. And then you've got two tiny little structures on the insides of your bronchi, your bronchioles and your alveoli. So the bronchioles really are only about 1 millimeter wide, and they're a thin, smooth muscle or epithelial muscle that help carry the air. And the alveoli are small sacs that act as a support system for your capillaries. And really what they do is they exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide. So it takes out the oxygen and it brings in carbon dioxide that your lungs will then breathe in. And lastly, the last structure we have is the lungs. Now, the lungs themselves are two large cone-shaped organs in the chest. They're porous and spongy in texture, and they have a lot of high elasticity. Think about it, they move in and out. You have one on the right side and one on the left side. Your right lung is actually made up of 3 different lobes, while the left lung is actually made up of 2 lobes because you have the other space that keeps the heart. Each lung in itself is about 10 to 12 inches in length, so they're pretty big in there. Alright, so now that we have an understanding of the organs of the respiratory system, let's discuss the act of breathing, or the mechanisms of breathing. When we discuss breathing, it's talking about the movement of air to and from the lungs. Another term that you may hear with this is called ventilation. The process of ventilation is really made up of one inhalation and one exhalation. Inhalation is the active process that involves taking a breath in. So if you were to take a breath in, that's an inhalation, or it's also called an inspiration. Now, the process of exhaling that or breathing out that breath is called exhalation or expiration. So breathing in, breathing out. That is one ventilation. Now, some other terms that you may hear in the respiratory system are when patients are having difficulties or problems with their breathing. If a patient's having difficulty breathing, that's called dyspnea. If the patient's having a lack or an absence of breathing greater than 19 seconds, that's called apnea. And if your patient has difficulty breathing in certain positions, whether that's standing up, laying down, or sitting, those are called orthopnea. All right, we're going to switch gears now. We're going to talk about Chapter 51. And really that's talking about pulmonology. And pulmonology is the study and the treatment of diseases of your respiratory system. This is going to include, like we just talked about, the trachea, the bronchial tubes, the lungs, and the alveoli. The primary function of your respiratory system is going to be to transport oxygen from the lungs through the bloodstream to the cells in your body and carry your waste products from the cells through the bloodstream to the lungs to be exhaled by your body. As a medical assistant, you will have a very important role in helping the provider diagnose conditions and diseases of the lungs. And this can be done through what we call a pulmonary function test, or a PFT. This may be performed when a patient complains of shortness of breath or difficulty breathing with minor exertion. It's also performed on patients who have asthma, chronic bronchitis, emphysema, or cystic fibrosis. Medical assistants can perform these exams in the office, and a pulmonary function test will evaluate the lung volume and capacity of your patient's lungs and show any alterations in the total lung capacity, the inspiration capacity, or your vital capacity. There are several types of pulmonary function tests available. Some of them are spirometry, arterial blood gases, lung volumes, pulmonary oximetry or pulse oximetry, diffusion capacity, and cardiomyopathy or cardiopulmonary exercise tests. So let's take a look at each of those. A spirometry test is a non-invasive test that measures the ability of the lungs to exhale. The result can reflect an elasticity of the patient's lungs and their ability to ventilate and the strength at which they can use those respiratory muscles. As a medical assistant, you play a very important role during a spirometry test. You are actually going to prepare that patient for the procedure, but you're also going to be their coach during that procedure. You're going to be their cheerleader. You're going to be there pushing them on so that way they can complete the test. Arterial blood gases are another test that we can run. This will measure the amount of oxygen, carbon dioxide, and pH of the blood. And what we use arterial blood gases for is really to help diagnose patients with COPD, or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or pneumonia. This will be performed by a specialist in this area as you're drawing blood from an artery. Any sort of mishap could be very detrimental to your patient. Next test we have is a lung volume, which is done with a peak flow meter. And really, peak flow meters are used for patients to measure their ability to move air into and out of their lungs. On a more day-to-day basis, patients who have asthma or chronic bronchitis will do this daily, just to see what their results will be. When you use the peak flow meter, you're going to take 3 different results and find the average number for those patients. Next, we have a pulse oximetry, and what this does is it measures the oxygen concentration in that arterial blood. It will be a device that you clip on the patient's finger, toe, or earlobe in order to do so. You want to make sure when you're performing this test that the patient has no fingernail polish on their fingers and that their fingers are actually warm. If their fingers are cold, the machine can't read the arterial blood gases and the blood volume won't be determined. The normal percentage rate for an oxygen saturation is 95 to 100%. If it's less than that, a patient may need oxygen to help them breathe. Alright, so that's chapter 51 for you. We've got one more to go. So we're going to look at chapter 54, which is dealing with the routes of medication and the methods for administering medication to patients. Now, because we are dealing with the respiratory system, the main way that you're going to administer medications to these patients is using the inhalation method. This means that medications are going to be delivered directly into the nose or mouth, and then they get breathed in and can actually go to the lungs to help them. Some medications that you might be responsible for either helping administer or teaching a patient to use would be aerosol sprays, bronchodilator inhalers, or nebulizer medications. Alright guys, so this is where I'm going to stop for the week 1 video. I really encourage you to make sure that you're reading your suggested pages on your own and reading those outside of the video. This will help you better understand and grasp the materials not only for your discussion post this week, your quiz this week, but for also when you're in the lab this week with your lab instructors. It will help you have a better understanding of the procedures that you will be doing. For your discussion board this week, we're going to be discussing the spirometry test preparation and the coaching method. You'll need to write your discussion post on what you think is the proper way to prepare a patient and when you need to perform a spirometry test. You will need to explain what you also think is the purpose and importance of coaching your patient during this test. Your initial discussion post will be due Tuesday by midnight, and you'll have to respond to 2 of your classmates' discussion posts by Saturday at midnight. There is a grading rubric that I will be using when it comes to your discussion boards, actually within that discussion board. So if you want to know what I will be grading you on, take a look at that first and make sure you're hitting all of the important key pieces so you get the full credit you want. Also this week you do have your first quiz. This first quiz will be over the chapters that we've discussed today. So that's going to be chapter 29. Let me make sure I have the right. Yep, 29, 51, and 54. This will be an online quiz that consists of 16 questions. 13 will be a mixture of multiple choice and true-false, and 3 questions will be short answer essays. Please make sure that you complete your quiz Sunday by midnight, but please know that there is a time limit on your quiz of 20 minutes. So you won't get a lot of time to do this, but these quizzes are set up to really help prepare you for taking your Certified Medical Assisting exam. If you have any questions or comments, please make sure that you reach out to me and I will help you as best I can. If not, welcome back to another quarter here at Rasmussen and have a wonderful week. Bye, guys.